been thinking about what we leave as a legacy. My maternal grandfather left numerous paintings, poetry, and memoirs of his war experience. When growing up, I was always around my grandfather, whether he was doing his plein air painting or sitting in his quiet study, suffused with oil paint fumes. As a child, I never really understood the world he created until most recently I began to paint with watercolors. His late self-portrait, hanging in my study, continues to encourage me with warm and muted colors. Every time my hands create the sounds of a stirring brush in a water vessel, my heart travels to his study, filled with warmth and childlike joy. My maternal grandmother left me countless sweet memories of unconditional love. In grade 6, I vividly remember that she showed me a carefully saved blue button from my kindergarten uniform and attached it to her wallet with a string. Taking care of you when you were small was the happiest memory of my life, she told me in Japanese in her kitchen, while gently rubbing the small button that I used to wear every day. Holding back tears, I understood what the button meant to her. It fascinates me that these reconstructed scenes of childhood are not made of oil paints or movies, but of complex ensembles of neurons firing tens of thousands of action potential per second from my retina to my visual cortex and beyond. Our perception of coherent reality is contingent on complex and creative neural ensembles which simultaneously deconstruct and integrate information representing different aspects of sensory input. How is my memory made in the first place and retained even after a half-century? Scientists believe that memories require that we attend to relevant stimuli and sensory experiences called the sensory register process. As memory begins in sensory memory, moves to short-term memory, and eventually moves to long-term memory. While synaptic plasticity is unique and remarkable and still mysterious, our sensory experience, whether sound, touch, sight, smells, or taste, is undoubtedly the vast edifice of memory, both in its creation and its retrieval. One of my earlier sensory experiences is tactile. Needless to say, all Japanese children learn origami, the art of paper folding, from kindergarten. Folding, whether with paper or piece of cloth, is well ingrained in Japanese culture. In my kindergarten, we brought our own lunch every day, wrapped with a square seam fabric called handkerchief, instead of a pre-made lunchbox we see in the West. I remember trying to wrap as tightly as possible to secure the lid of my anodized aluminum lunchbox, which did not have a fastener. And at lunchtime, I loved unknotting and opening handkerchief to see the prints of my favorite anime characters or beautiful flower patterns while using it as a lunch mat, as we were taught. We take the art of folding with us everywhere we go, but we are not fully aware of how we humans evolved together the folding challenges as an answers to real-world problems. As we now see in the recent development in mathematics, engineering, and astronomy, origami is more than just a child's play. Albert Einstein said, "A new idea comes suddenly and in a rather intuitive way. But intuition is nothing but the outcomes of earlier intellectual experience." I think origami is a perfect example of how we give form to mathematical insight, artistically and otherwise. What else can origami give form to? Memory is the reactivation of a specific group of neurons, scientifically speaking. in everyday context, remembering something precious, deeply personal and intimate is part of the joy in our lives. Research has found that combining spoken words and images enhances our memory. How well we remember an abstract concept can be improved by employing concrete examples or stories. After forming a memory, we need to consolidate it to make it last longer. This is easier when there is a context to the information being learned. This is why memory aids are useful. When the stories are recited and visualized, the associations are strengthened the neural pathways formed by synaptic plasticity. A personal story presented with images contextualizes the memory and enhances its meaning. This is a folding book I made a decade ago when my daughter Maya turned 4 years old. At the Montessori preschool in Manhattan where I sent my daughter, there was a freestyle show and tell time on your birthday. All students sat in a large circle, and in the center there was a symbol of sun, pretending the whole room was a solar system. The birthday kids had to bring something special, hold it to their chest, and quietly complete the trip around the sun for the number of years they lived on Earth. As a first-time mother, I wanted to make something very special for that occasion. For inspiration, I turned to paper folding, a familiar subject, as a medium for the visual aid of Maya's presentation. I wanted to make something interactive in which she could somehow meaningfully correspond to her 4 wraps around the sun. I don't know how this idea came about, but after some brainstorming, I decided to make a hybrid of accordion book and a scroll like this so that she could unfold 1 page at a time while extending the book with every turn. And there was even a surprise feature in the last page. I added a butterfly coming out, wishing her to flourish. Once the main idea came to mind, the rest was fun and easy. I collaboratively put the content together with Maya, who helped me by cutting out the photos and papers and adding her stickers on the book. I still vividly remember how passionately she presented the folding book in front of her peers on her 4th birthday. Over the past decade, this folding book has become a timeless treasure and a constant source of joy and inspiration. A piece of paper keeping precious memories alive in the fold, literally and figuratively. I read somewhere that novelty ensures durability when it comes to memory. So does the emotional value attributed to the material. While creating memories is the result of certain connections or synapses of the cerebral cortex, what makes memory memorable is the action of making it extraordinary by using all of our senses. Some of my extraordinary memories come from the many years I spent hosting culture salons at my home, starting in 2010. Like the French salons of the 17th century or Gertrude Stein's Paris salon of the early 20th century, people from all walks of life came to share stories in unique ways. Sharing a story and using it to connect us across cultures and generations seems worthy and righteous to me. One unexpected event occurred when I found myself creating a non-profit organization, the Vancouver Arts Colloquium Society. I had no professional training in the arts nor non-profit management, and my education, a PhD and postdoctoral training in cancer epidemiology and public health, seems to have uncertain value in my new career. I was relying on blind faith and the strong support of friends who are local artists. However, I began to see links between art and science. Both rely on creativity, intuitive understanding, problem solving, reflection, and ability to acquire skills as the needs arises. This has been the central premise of the interdisciplinary work I do with the community. But my most pressing question, the one that I've been pondering for a long time, is how we come to identify with and distinguish ourselves from our interconnected communities. And beneath this question lies a personal quest. As an immigrant in North America from Japan, I have been rediscovering the culture of my youth and reshaping my Japanese identity along the way. I am now realizing that the key to this identifying and distinguishing lies in the development of a personal roots that allow us to express, contextualize, and reinvent identity. I am embracing my freedom to reinvent myself in the context of authentic Japanese roots in this flawed time of uncharted challenges. In a sense, I am repairing and rerouting my fragmented, transplanted self. And this is a story I want to leave as a legacy. Even as I speak this, the COVID-19 pandemic is keeping many of us indoors. In response, the Vancouver Arts Colloquium Society has initiated a visual storytelling project called MemoryGami as a way to give form and new life to our memories and at the same time to connect older adults with youth. After all, relationships are what makes a community and what eventually become some of the real synaptic plasticity we can see in the fold.
This is my MemoryGami book. I really like this design because it allows me to put the little origami models that have some significance in my life into these little pockets. And then on the other side, I can actually write down, like in storybook format, the actual memories associated with the origami pieces. So the very first one I have in here is a little blue dragon. And it's a water dragon because I was born in the year of the water dragon. The next one I have is to designate the month of my birth, which is March. The zodiac symbol for the month of March is the fish, and this is a kissy fish. I'm not actually meaning to kiss, but I like to talk. I went to Strathcona Elementary School, and I didn't know a word of English, and on my very first day, I wore a raincoat, and I had my yellow umbrella and my yellow boots, and the teacher was very kind, and she helped me take off my raincoat, but she couldn't tell me how to take off my boots. So she used the tip of my umbrella and tapped me gently on my boot, but I thought she was attacking me, so I kicked her in the shin. Well, she was very gentle and very kind, and she continued to work with me so that I could get into grade 2. I love my school, and especially the school library, and I promised myself that I would read all the books in the library, which I didn't completely do, but I started with the letter A, and one of my most significant memories is discovering the work of Louisa May Alcott, Little Women. And I read that book and I loved it, and I eventually even bought a copy for myself. My husband built a 14-foot sailboat, and he asked me on our first date on that boat. We launched this at Kate's Park in North Vancouver. Well, it was a lovely first date, and he told me to tack when we were on the boat, and I was looking for a thumbtack, And it's actually a sailing maneuver that I never knew about because I never sailed before. But he forgave me, and of course, we fell in love, and he asked me to marry him. But when he asked me to marry him, he said that he also knew he was also asking to marry my mother because my mother was widowed and I was an only child. So this is our house where for 22 years of our 44 years of marriage, my mother lived with us. Now, I've always loved origami and done it most all of my life. And I've shared it with adults and children. And every year at Christmas, and it's been now 25 years, I do a Christmas ornament for my friends and share that. And I also try to fold every year the lunar animal. And this year, it's the year of the cow for 2021. And it's actually the year of the ox. This is a cow, the female version. I also have a symbol for music because music plays a big part in my life. And I hope that all this origami and everything will continue to be in my heart. And it's my hope that I'll be able to continue it far into my retirement to lift me up.
"1968. At 17, I told my dad, I'm going to get a theater degree. Theater? You're good looking, but you ain't that good looking. You're talented. But Dad, I'll get a degree in theater and English and then a teaching certificate so I can earn money and do theater. Oh, okay. A reasonable man at heart. 1975. Teaching in a high school in Prince George, a new school building, and I was rewarded with a lovely big carpeted room. When I told my Drama 8 class that they were going to do a puppet show, they yelled, "Puppets? Oh, that's for grade 1. I convinced them that they would create clever, updated puppet shows based on a fairy tale. "Jazz it up," I said. When the puppet shows were ready, there was a strange ambiance when Eric's group got up behind the puppet theater. Student eyes glanced at me and someone giggled. The play was called Jack and the Giant ... The puppet cast, Jack, the mother Jackie, Jacko the Giant, and Jackass, a gigantic chicken made from a tea cozy. Sure enough, they jazzed it up all right. The mother didn't throw beans out the window. She threw marijuana seeds out the window. I was terrified that the principal would hear of this and fire me. I mean, after all, it was 1977, not 2021. By the time the puppets were all stoned in happy bliss, I couldn't hold back my laughter, and the kids cheered, "Yeah!" And then I yelled, "Quiet! I'll make you a deal. I'll give you an A if you promise never to mention this outside of this room, and we aren't doing it for parent-teacher night." We all burst out laughing. 1984. Vancouver in my small, neat office, alone. Waiting for the first of 2 clients who had booked appointments in my new business, then called Voice Consultants. I was so excited to use my theater training to help business people with presentations and public speaking. I waited and waited. Number 1 didn't show. Neither did number 2. I'm not one to cry, but tears welled up, and I went downstairs in the old heritage building to the switchboard operator. Yes, an old-time switchboard. Mrs. McBee looked up and saw my distress. I told her what had happened. "Oh dear, how terrible. Now, you have good ideas. You go right back up and type out a course plan and take it right up the street to the Vancouver Community College. You can teach a night school class and you'll do a brilliant job, and all the colleges will want you. And I did exactly that. When I got to the man in charge of the night school classes, he browsed the plan and said, nicely explained. Sounds good, but we don't do that kind of course here. But it only costs you 7 cents to advertise it in your brochure, and it'll fill up to the max, and I'll do a good job, and you'll be praised by your boss. Well, okay, let's give it a go. And it went, filled up, and other colleges hired me too. And I was lucky because I had a wonderful photographer 2 blocks away who did the greatest photo of me I've ever had. So I looked so beautiful that people would say, "Is that you?" Yes. So it was a great time teaching, 46 years by the time I finished.
Your family comes from Scotland, your family comes from Ireland, your family comes from Hong Kong, and your family comes from Croatia. Can you show me the letters for your name? Can you point to them?
Henrit.
Good. Can you pull on the little bauble? Your mother, Henrik, is born in Canada, but both her parents are from Hong Kong. This is the story where your parents met at the university, and your father, he went to UBC where he met your mother, and he won the gold medal, the provincial gold medal for the top student. From Croatia, this is your papa, and your papa's father came to help with the railroad. Great-grandmother Ruth, that's my mother, she had a Great Dane, and she went to school here in Vancouver, and her father was cutting some wood with a great big saw. On a Sunday he was showing some people, and he did not really know how to use the machine. He was a supervisor, and he cut the ends of his fingers. Alan's parents, Mina, she was born in a log cabin, and that was on Lake Superior. Her parents had been born in Scotland, but she brought her family to Calgary. And they had Isabel and Betty, the 2 girls, and my father, Alan. And Isabel finished school at 17 and got the gold medal for the province of Alberta with a small scholarship, but not enough to go to university. So at 17, Isabel became a grade 1 teacher. At 17, with 48 students, she taught for 2 years, and then she went to university. She went to Laval in Quebec to get her doctorate in French, but she heard that the Ursuline convent had Montcalm's skull. So she knocked on the door of the Ursuline convent and said, "I would like to see the skull." And they opened a little part on the door, and they handed her Montcalm's skull. So when my husband and I went to Quebec City, we asked to see Montcalm's skull, and it's there, but now it's encased in a big glass case. My father's mother's side of the family lived at Lake Superior. And in Lake Superior, her father was a tugboat captain and made sure the ships were safe on the Great Lakes. But some of the relatives decided to go across the Great Lakes and then by land to New York and get on a large ship, a sailing ship, to go to Australia, and they were never heard from again. So I think they were lost at sea. The earliest parts of the family, this goes back to 1795. They were from Ireland, from Scotland, from the Lowlands, from Croatia, and from Hong Kong. They are the relatives that make up our family tree. Henrik loves the flowers, especially the ones that are snapdragons. We love the sea. We've always lived near the sea. I truly love bunnies, and we had some bunnies that we had in our family. And until we had a problem, we had a raccoon that tore the wire off the bunny cage. So Henrik, your family comes from different places, and I hope that you will have a chance to travel someday.
Trees, clouds, landscapes and ocean, that is my passion. I love trees. As I look at them, I feel uplifted, joyous and spiritual. The way the branches reach up to the sky as if in prayer, waving about in the breeze like a ballet, the sound they make, likened to music, a symphony of sound accompanied by birdsong. The leaves that flutter and whisper the glory of God's creation, and in the hot sunny days giving a welcome shadow below, and the children climbing the tree to play amongst the branches, imagining all kinds of adventures. Sometimes trees bear delicious fruits, apples, oranges, lemons, mangoes, peaches, plums and cherries, guavas and papaya, the gifts of God. What more can we ask for? From my living room window, I admire the view of the park with the trees, and my arms reach out to hug the view in thanksgiving to what I see. The sea, ocean, the sweeping of the waves that crashes onto the beach, bringing the tide in and out. The heaving waves with white spray atop, the colors of blues, turquoise, and pale green, the reflections from the sky that play on the waves. The freighters on the horizon, coming from afar, carrying all the goods. Seagulls dipping and flying above the rolling and sweeping of the waves. The sound of the waves rolling in and out as it reaches the beach. Landscapes, land and sea and sky. The undulating forms of the land, valleys and vales, hills and mountains, dotted with trees, rivers running through, wild animals abound, all shades of color, green, blue, brown, grey, reaching up to the horizon. The landscapes of England like a quilt, stretching forever. The vast plains of the Masai Mara in Africa. The wild animals dotting the scene, lions, elephants, zebras, hippos, giraffes, and multitudes of wild birds, roaming the wilds of Africa. We live in a land of plenty. I'll never forget standing in the back of a safari car, surveying the scene of the Masai Mara, tawny-colored grasslands. The feeling came over me that I was home. It was overwhelming. I was born in Africa. We must not forget the sky. Clouds arranged across the sky, sometimes very white against the blue, and sometimes grey, ominous with the warning of a storm. So beautiful to see, and when it hits the earth, the smell of the rain coming is a unique experience. The noise it makes as it lands on the dried earth, the sound of thunder as it rumbles across the sky, the flash of lightning, and the pouring rain that follows, it all fills my heart with joy. Earth and sky, woods and fields, lakes and rivers, the mountains and the sea are excellent schoolmasters and teach us more than we can learn from books.
The inside must be white, said my beloved grandmother, who routinely soaked the porcelain cups in dilute bleach. Savoring her first sip of sencha, everyday green tea, declaring every time, "Ah, so good this tea," as if she had never tasted such good tea. She's gone now. I'm gazing into a floating tea stick in my cup, wondering what was the pure white tea cup for. Was it like an open window, open to the world's real colors? Expressing great thanks for a simple day, even for a pinch of tea leaves that lost their sweetness after the third round serving. Bright green to pale yellow to moss green to sage, watching the shades of green as shift in existence, a surging awareness, becoming an ancestor. Sencha. 内側は真っ白でないとね。最愛の祖母はそう言った。定期に茶飲み茶碗を漂白剤の入った桶に浸すのが習慣である。毎日飲む煎茶を入れるたびに最初の一すすりで、ああお茶がおいしいとしみじみ口ずさむ。まるでそんなおいしいお茶を味わったことがないかのごとく。彼女は今はもういない。茶碗の中でゆらゆら揺れている一つの茶柱を見つめながら思いにふける。白い湯飲み茶碗の意味について。世界の色をありのままで見るための開いた扉。平凡な毎日に感謝を表していた祖母。一つまみのお茶の葉っぱにも、出がらしで甘みがなくなった葉っぱでさえも、若緑、薄黄色、苔虫色、茶色、変わりゆくお茶の色は生き物すべての存在の移れゆく真理を彩っているのか。
ふと気がついた。私も先人になりうる今この時。おしまい。ありがとう。
That was beautiful. I think that was perfect.